Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome the President of the New York Public Library, Dr. Paul LeClaire, and on behalf of Mayor Michael Bloomberg, the Speaker of the New York City Council, Christine Quinn.
Thank you very much. Mayor Bloomberg, Speaker Quinn, former Mayor Dinkins, Carnegie medalists of 2009 and their presenters, great-grandchildren of Andrew Carnegie, of which there are 3 here this afternoon, distinguished guests and special friends. I'm delighted on behalf of Katie Marin, the Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the New York Public Library, and indeed on behalf of all of our trustees and staff, to welcome you to the Stephen Schwarzman Building and to the Celeste Bartos Forum for today's especially significant conferral of honors on some of our nation's most important philanthropists. Philanthropy, combined with essential public sector support, created here, more than a century ago, what has become without question the greatest library system for the free use of the people in history. That admittedly is a very big statement, but believe me, it's not an exaggeration. Unless anyone still harbor the illusion that physical libraries, of the kind that Andrew Carnegie built, are becoming irrelevant in today's information-saturated online world, let me reassure you that in New York, public libraries are being used more now and in more diverse ways than they ever have been before. In the last 12 months, there were 40 million physical visits to public libraries in the 5 boroughs of New York City. That's more and a lot more than the combined total of visits to all of our cultural institutions and sports teams. And in our system, at the New York Public Library, visits are up by 20% over the past 2 years, and loans are up by 34% over the same period of time. And thanks to the leadership of an enlightened mayor and an enlightened speaker of the City Council, both of whom are here today and one of whom is being honored, New York's public libraries are now open more days and hours than they have been in 50 years. Not bad. With their help, for example, the Mid-Manhattan Library across the street is now open 15 hours a day from 8 a.m. till 11 p.m., 4 days a week from Monday through Thursday, and it's packed all the time. Andrew Carnegie, who paid for building the first generation of our city's neighborhood libraries, would be happy indeed that his stupendous gift to New York is as meaningful for our people today and to their educational, social, and economic advancement as it was to the people of New York when he made that great gift in 1901. And now it's my very, very great pleasure to introduce a special friend of mine and a truly special friend of public libraries in New York City, the great, the wonderful Speaker of the City Council, Christine Quinn.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Well, thank you, Paul. And Paul, I want to thank you and Katie and all of the staff people and board members of the Public Library for the tremendous job you do every day and the real creativity you bring to the position. So thank you very, very much. And thank all of you for being here today. It is incredibly exciting to have this event back in New York City and back in the public library. In my opinion, there is no better city you could be in and no better space you could be in for a host of reasons, not the least of which is so much of Andrew Carnegie's philanthropic career and work was in these 5 boroughs. So it's wonderful to have you back. You know, his work and his contributions, in addition to all of the institutions they supported and the people they helped, have spawned a tremendous commitment to philanthropy in our city and a tremendous network of not-for-profits. We're very lucky now in our city to have over 10,000 not-for-profit organizations, many of whom you all have supported. Organizations that in tough times like this, when, although we are so proud to have the libraries open so many hours, the truth is we can't do everything we want to do. And what helps make up the difference? Generous philanthropists like yourself who give to so many of the great not-for-profits in our city. the places people can turn to when they need a little extra help getting daycare, or they need a little extra help taking care of their parent or a sick family member. You know, people often ask me, and I'm sure the mayor and the former mayor, how will New York City get through this recession? How can we possibly do it? Well, you look around this room and the answer is right here. We will get through it as we've gotten through so many other challenges, rising to the challenge that Andrew Carnegie set for all of us. We will get through it by giving to the greatest degree we each are able to do and helping our neighbors in a selfless way. So thank you for reminding all of us of that today. Thank you for being so generous. And when you walk out of this building today, just take a look at the lions on either side of you, and they will also send us the message that helps us get through tough times like these, a message that Andrew Carnegie well knew, that the two things you need, no matter what else, are patience and definitely fortitude. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. My last and very, very happy task today is to introduce our host. I'm only the landlord, and that, of course, is Vartan Gregorian, the brilliant president of the Carnegie Corporation, and my predecessor once removed, here as the president of the best of all possible libraries, the New York Public. It's hard to imagine an American who has had a more distinguished career, who has had a more significant impact on the distinguished institutions that he has led, who has been covered with more honors and awards, who has been more generous in the wonderful way that he gives sage advice to so many of us. Hard to imagine a person who has given more bear hugs, and hard to imagine a person who is more universally admired and, more importantly, more universally liked than Vartan Gregorian. It is he who, joining forces with Brooke Astor, Richard Salomon, Andrew Heiskell, and Marshall Rose, literally lifted the New York Public Library from the doldrums of the late 1970s and restored it to its rightful position as one of New York's centrally important places of learning, of cultural production, and of economic growth by building human capital in our city. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only, the incomparable, the great Vartan Gregorian.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that lovely, exaggerated introduction. It's a very emotional opportunity, occasion for me to be here, because I was present here during bad times and good times. It's like coming home. So thank you, Paul, for welcoming us here today. 2 days, yesterday and today, we have had great meetings, great celebrations. And I don't want to repeat what we have discussed, but I just would like to mention two things. One is, I'm glad for the fact that David Rockefeller is here, representing a generation that supported all the causes of New York. Second, I'd like to thank Mayor Bloomberg and Mayor David Dinkins, who's here, as well as the only beloved governor in the history of New Jersey, Governor Kane, who's also here. New York Public Library is the most democratic institution in the United States or any place, because it caters to the rich, the famous, the poor, the desperate, and the eager, as well as those who are anxious and ready to satisfy the thirst of their imagination and desire. Millions of people are using this place. The monument stands for democracy, equality, privilege of learning. And it was my pleasure to be part of the team that was mentioned, Mrs. Astor, Andrew Heiskell, and Richard Sullivan, and millions of New Yorkers who supported it. The only document that I saved from here, copy of it, was a Social Security check sent by a retiree. Said, I'm not rich, I'm not famous, I don't have money, but please have this monthly allocation of Social Security for the New York Public Library. That's the kind of institution he is. I'm sorry I'm talking about New York Public Library and Andrew Carnegie, but it's related. So let me mention one other point. During these past 2 days, we discussed the fact that Andrew Carnegie's legacy is with us. The whole idea that a person who dies rich dies disgraced was discussed this morning, because they did not have the imagination to reinvest in their society. The very idea that education is central to the health of democracy, science is central to the health of democracy, is Andrew Carnegie's legacy. And we discussed those things. We also discussed today, that's why I mentioned David Rockefeller's name, ancestors in training. Andrew Carnegie, I'm sure, copied from Abbé Sieyès, French revolutionary leader in 1792 or 93, don't ask me which year, who said, aristocracy is like potatoes, the best part is underground. You cannot brag about your ancestors without you being worthy of your ancestors, and you in turn trying to be a great ancestor. And that's what Andrew Carnegie's message is. And today we have Rockefeller here, David Rockefeller, whose family has been training generations of ancestors to be and to become. We have here also a great family, great-great-grandson of Andrew Carnegie is here, William, I call him Sir William Thompson, in order not to confuse anybody with other people. So he's here, and I wanted to ask him to come here also here because he moved me to tears once when he came 2001, right here during first Carnegie Medals of Philanthropy. He said, I regret to tell you I have no money. We don't have money to give away. Because our great-grandfather, Andrew Carnegie, spent $500 million of philanthropy, 15 million only, all the family and all the related issues. I'm glad he did that because Sir William now is his own person and his own, and that's what Andrew Carnegie would have liked to see, that people are not dependent, they're independent. And so, Sir William, I'd like you to come join me to give your thoughts on it. In the meantime, let's give him a big hand.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. May I start by thanking Vartan for his kind words. It is due to him that we are all here today. It was his vision and imagination which created the concept of the Carnegie Medal, to be awarded to those individuals or families who emulated Carnegie's example of distributing wealth for the benefit of mankind. Now, I'm sure you all know Vartan is an historian, but he also has a sense of history. And it was he who reached out to the descendants of Andrew Carnegie and invited us to share not only in the work of the Carnegie institutions, but also to be present at events like this. It has been a cause of great happiness to us all, and on behalf of all the Carnegie family, I thank him. But the term Carnegie family now has another meaning. The establishment of the Carnegie Medal 8 years ago led to a change in the way the different Carnegie foundations operated. Previously, each had tended to work independently within its own sphere, and there was little dialogue or cooperation with the other foundations. The involvement of all the Carnegie foundations in the medal selection process and in administering the award ceremonies brought a new level of dialogue and cooperation. This has not only strengthened the Carnegie brand, but it has also encouraged working together on joint initiatives. That Carnegie's reputation in the philanthropic world is so widely appreciated today is due largely to the many able people who dedicate themselves to administering the legacies he created. I hope Andrew is watching us today from above, assuming he's not shaking hands with Mr. Frick down below. And I'm sure he would be the first to appreciate and acknowledge their work. In his book, The Gospel of Wealth, Andrew expounded that a person who, through hard work and endeavor, accumulated great wealth also had a duty within his or her lifetime to use those same talents to ensure the distribution of that wealth for the present and future benefit of the human race. We welcome here today 4 families whose philanthropic work exemplifies this ideal, and we look forward to honouring not only their great generosity, but also the continuing application of their talent, skill, and imagination in the distribution of the wealth they have accumulated. I welcome you all to the 2009 Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, it's seldom that you meet a public intellectual par excellence who also makes a living through news, analysis, and others. And I have in mind, of course, none other than Bill Moyers, who will be the master of our ceremony. So I'd like to invite Bill Moyers to join us. There you are.
Thank you. Always keep Barton's back to you. Thank you for that introduction, my friend, and thanks to all of you for the welcome. I'm sure that Vartan asked me to be the MC today because he wanted a broadcast journalist who lives by the clock. Well, we're already 20 minutes into the show, late, so excuse me if I rush to finish when the red light flashes at 3:13. I was part of the inauguration of the Carnegie Medals for Philanthropy on December 10th, 2001, and I'm very pleased to return. I'm also pleased that my wife, Judith Davidson Moyers, is here too. Not only is she my creative partner, as well as the chief executive of our independent production company and an educator journalist in her own right, she has a closer connection to the Carnegie story than some of you in this room, because she taught school many years ago in the Scottish town of Dunfermline, where Andrew Carnegie was born in 1835. Judith, of course, didn't come along until later, but we're still shaking the genealogical tree, hoping to find an even closer connection. I have something else in common with Andrew Carnegie. Soon after I became publisher of Newsday in 1967, and we moved from Washington to Long Island, I was invited to lunch here in the city with a businessman of great means. During our conversation, he became very emotional as he told me of arriving in New York many years earlier. I had no car, he said. My only suit was on my back. The soles of my shoes were thin, and I carried all of my possessions in a paper bag. I was quite impressed, and I asked him, "Do you remember what was in that paper bag?" "Oh, sure," he answered. "I had $500,000 in cash and $1 million in negotiable securities." True story. Not so Andrew Carnegie. On his first job, he earned $1.20 a week as a bobbin boy in a cotton factory. That's about what I earned as a cub reporter on the Marshall News Messenger in East Texas. The comparison stops there. Oh yes, in that little Texas town where I grew up, there was a Carnegie Library, one of 3,000 in, I think, 43, maybe 46 states. It was on the campus of the all-black college in Marshall, a sharply segregated society. The students who came to Wiley were poor, including James Farmer, who would one day be a great figure with Martin Luther King in the civil rights movement. He was at the time the youngest member of the Wiley College debating team that beat Harvard University in one of the David versus Goliath upset victories of the last century. You may have seen their story depicted in that wonderful movie starring Denzel Washington as their debate coach. James Farmer told me that Wiley students spent hours, hundreds of hours, in the Carnegie Library. Some philanthropy, you see, keeps expanding in the universe through time and space in the lives of others. Clearly, there hasn't been this much wealth in one room since they sealed King Tut in his tomb. But despite their wealth and privilege, our medalists admitted earlier to feeling somewhat humble by this moment. Well, relax, all of you. As the late comedian George Burns said on an occasion when he was honored by his friends in Hollywood, "I don't deserve this award, but I have arthritis and I don't deserve that either." Enjoy the moment. Some people I know love money for its own sake. Some love power for its own sake. And sometimes they are the same people. But over the years, I've found that the people of means who are the happiest and most deeply satisfied are those who use their money to empower others. They feel more than lucky. They feel blessed, as do our honorees today. If I may speak directly to the medalists, whom you will soon meet, here's what makes your work so crucial. In his book, Collapse: How Societies Choose to Fail or Succeed, the anthropologist Jared Diamond tells us that one of the factors in the decline of other societies was the insulation of elites. Mayans on the Yucatan Peninsula, for example, suffered as environmental degradation diminished food supplies. Chronic warfare made matters worse as more and more people fought over less and less fertile land and diminishing resources. Although Mayan kings could see their forests vanishing and their hills eroding, they were able to insulate themselves from problems afflicting the rest of society. By extracting the wealth of commoners, they could remain well while everyone else was slowly starving. Too late, they realized they could not reverse the deteriorating environment, and they became casualties of their own privilege. Any society, Jared Diamond warns, contains a blueprint for failure built in if people at the top insulate themselves from an awareness of the commonplace experiences of life. Gradually, they lose the motivation to support the police force, the municipal water supply, Social Security, public schools, public libraries, public transportation, and public parks. And that road leads to a state of nature, a war of all against all, where the strong take what they can and the weak suffer what they must. What is civilization, after all, but a thin veneer of civility stretched across the passions of the human heart? You, our medalists, are receiving this Medal of Philanthropy because you have refused the insulation of great wealth. Live and let live is a philosophy that will not sustain a civilization. If we do not live and help live, we are finished, just like the Mayans. And you medalists know, because you've practiced it, that it requires moral courage to see beyond one's own privilege and sometimes to act against it for the sake of others. It's not easy giving money away. I found that out during my 13 years on the board of trustees of the Rockefeller Foundation, 5 years on the board of the Open Society Institute, And over the past 18 years as president of the Florence and John Schuman Foundation, now the Schuman Center for Media and Democracy, where I've been working with two brothers, Robert and Ford Schuman, whose family decided to spend down their assets in their lifetime and asked me to help them. Like Andrew Carnegie, who, as Vartan said, famously gave away 90% of his wealth because he believed that the man who dies rich dies disgraced, the Schumans are almost done. When their time comes, they will leave with honor. And it's been a hoot. But I've also been on the other side of philanthropy. As public broadcasters, Judith and I raise every penny for every production we mount on PBS, mostly from foundations. So I've had a window on the world of philanthropy that enables me to see both sides, supply and demand. I know firsthand the hazards, challenges, and frustrations of the field. For one thing, when you make a mistake, people are loath to tell you. Unlike investing, where the market delivers quick verdicts on mistakes, or business, where bad decisions cannot go long undetected, or so we thought until a year ago, the feedback loop in philanthropy rarely turns up irrefutable evidence that you have blown it. One of the hardest things about philanthropy I've learned is the effort to reconcile its profound inner tensions. It's a curious thing. Americans worship wealth. Just about everybody wants to be rich. I've been rereading Michael Harrington's book, The Other America. He inspired President Kennedy to first declare war on poverty. Harrington explained the paradox this way. Tell a typical poor person that the deck is stacked in favor of the rich. He won't say we've got to change the system. He'll say, how do I get rich? On the other hand, as the philanthropic advisor Michael Lerner, also a friend, has reminded us, people who inherit great wealth often suffer an agony as difficult as what afflicts those who struggle with the more common conditions of life. The angst can be particularly exquisite in our culture, he says, because those who suffer from wealth can find almost no sympathy outside the direct circle of family or peers. Let's face it, this is a deeply contested activity that can even put you in a relationship of psychic toxicity with those you want to help. I've often thought that anyone who gives away money to be loved or even appreciated is longing for what can never be purchased unless you buy a dog. But when you get it right, when you have squared your expectations with reality and know as only you can that what you have done well, it can be sweet. Andrew Carnegie got it right, and so have our medalists. They represent a cross-section of commitments and geography, yet each one shares the sensibilities of Mr. Carnegie himself, who believed that the trustees of great wealth have a moral obligation to promote the well-being of others who have been less lucky in the lottery of talent, circumstance, and opportunity. We'll meet those medalists now. Let's go to the first video.
At the beginning of the year, the Chronicle of Philanthropy announced that Mayor Michael Bloomberg was the leading individual donor in the United States. Businessweek magazine proclaimed that the mayor can now claim to be #1 in a category he cares deeply about, giving his money away. Since 1997, he has pledged more than $1.5 billion to a wide variety of charities and initiatives. But it is not just the scale of his philanthropy that is larger than life. His point of view is equally remarkable.
I believe very strongly that one of the primary goals of philanthropy should be to encourage service and giving by others. Philanthropy at its best is inspirational, as my father taught me. It is entrepreneurial, as I have learned over the years, and it is needs-driven and, wherever possible, data-driven.
For the Bloomberg Foundation, philanthropy extends to the well-established and the innovative, from Johns Hopkins University to campaigns to stop smoking and to promote safe driving, from major museums to small community centers. Mayor Bloomberg's goal is to give all his money away. For him, the best measure of a philanthropist is that his check to the undertaker bounces. Michael R. Bloomberg, philanthropy with an edge.
To introduce Michael Bloomberg, two very special people. We all know Caroline Kennedy for her work in behalf of our public schools. As a journalist, I know her for her remarkable book, In Our Defense, The Bill of Rights in Action. And as a grandfather, I know her for her other book, another book, A Family Christmas. We all know Vartan Gregorian for his modesty, for his beard, for his playful seriousness, and for his redeeming marriage to Claire. Here to present our first medal are Vartan Gregorian and Caroline Kennedy.
Thank you. I'm honored to have been asked to present today's first Carnegie Medal to our honoree. When Vartan called to ask me to do this, I started thinking about the significance of this award, and I realized that we all have the chance and the power to make the world a little better, and that's really the test of a meaningful life. Some people do it in a classroom, a garden, a family, a neighborhood, and others on a larger scale. Few people have made as big an impact as our honoree, Mayor Michael Bloomberg. In a rare combination of personal commitment, financial generosity, and political leadership, he has transformed our city and the attitudes of everyone who lives here. I've seen it firsthand in our 1,400 schools, where thanks to the mayor's vision and perseverance, our children are finally beginning to get the education they need and deserve, and were denied for far too long, until Mayor Bloomberg stepped forward to take responsibility. I've also seen up close the special place where his values were nurtured, as I watched him work with my Uncle Teddy to put their mothers' names in huge, gigantic letters on Boston's newest park, the Greenway. We should all be so lucky to have sons like them, and it is a great tribute to the mayor that his daughters, Emma, who's here today, are continuing his commitment to a better future through their own philanthropic and work activities. Now it's my pleasure to read the citation on behalf of the Carnegie Foundation. Michael Bloomberg, you, like Andrew Carnegie, are truly a self-made man. In 1981, you began a small startup company, Bloomberg LP. Today, that company has over 275,000 subscribers to its financial news and information services. You embody the spirit of Andrew Carnegie. You hold dear the conviction that with great wealth comes great responsibility. As your historic public service and your consummate philanthropy so clearly illustrate, you have embraced your responsibilities with great humility, yet with exuberance, dedication, and selflessness. Your altruism is evident in every corner of New York City and well beyond our borders. In 2001, you were elected the 108th mayor of New York City. Under your leadership, the city has flourished. Crime is down to record lows, high school graduations have reached record highs, New Yorkers are living longer than ever, and the city gets greener and greater every day. But today we celebrate philanthropy. Your support in the areas of public health, medical research, education, arts and culture, and social services is extraordinary. But what truly sets you apart is your approach to giving. You have not only generously funded tried and true institutions, you have taken risks on less proven programs and smaller organizations. You bring resources and attention to causes that have long been ignored, focusing on issues that are both specific and solvable, like your groundbreaking programs to reduce tobacco use, improve global road safety, and remove illegal guns from the streets of our cities. And across all of your giving, there is a focus on innovation and a rigorous assessment of data. We all rejoice in the fact that the Chronicle of Philanthropy named you the country's leading individual donor in 2008. the more than 20 institutions founded by Andrew Carnegie present the Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy to you with great pride and deep admiration.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's very nice. Want me to say a few words? Yes. Be happy to. Please sit. Thank you. Greg, thank you so much, and thanks the Carnegie organizations for this wonderful honor. And I am extremely grateful. And to say humbled is, I don't even know how you say how much humbled you should be after Caroline said those things I said to her. I wouldn't have had the nerve to write that. My mother might have, but anyways, and I also wanted to thank the Carnegie family, particularly the honorary chair of the Medal Selection Committee, William Thompson. And if any, yes, he deserves a round of applause. But if anyone thought that I wouldn't say something nice about Bill Thompson at this moment, they were mistaken. And thank you, Bill Moyers. You talked about first jobs. I don't know if you know what David Rockefeller's first job was. He was a municipal employee. He was the secretary to Fiorello LaGuardia. I probably didn't pay very much, David, did it? No. Well, anyways. And Caroline, thank you so much. You may have read the story, and I often tell it, that my introduction to philanthropy came as a child watching my father write a check to the NAACP. Well, if you had told my parents back in Medford, Massachusetts, that one day a Bloomberg would be honored by a Kennedy, they would not have believed it. And I am honored to stand here today, and even more to stand with people that are legendary philanthropic families and who I have admired all of my adult life. Joan and Sandy Weil are the ultimate New Yorkers. Gordon Moore is probably, history will show that his inventions and his company will have democratized and given opportunity to people throughout this world in ways that nobody today understands. We all talk about tomorrow is a technological world. The smallest cell phone you could buy today has more computer power than the biggest IBM computer in the 1960s. And when people talk about the digital divide, they just don't understand what's happening. Today, 50% of the people that live in Africa have a mobile phone. So technology really is giving opportunity to people throughout the world, and Gordon Moore also has just been one of the most generous people. Remy Koch I've known for a long time. He's been very generous to Johns Hopkins, and he was my host in Istanbul when I went to his museum. I will never forget that. The Kennedys. Kennedys are America's family as much as any name that there really is. They've all made an enormous difference. The story about watching my father write the check really is something that has always stayed with me. And I do remember asking him why he was donating to the NAACP, a group our family really had no personal connection to, obviously. And he explained to me then that discrimination against any group was a threat to all of us, and that it was our responsibility to do what we could to help anyone in need. But that really is only half of the story. A single incident like that, no matter how impressive, would not have made a lifelong difference. The truth is, my father wrote checks, small ones, probably $50 a time, to the NAACP and other organizations every year. And I recall discussing similar contributions with him around the dinner table. My mother made sure that my sister and I waited for dinner for my father to come home every single night. And we went around the table talking about what we had done that day and why. And so that's where it wasn't just an isolated example of charity, I believe, but rather my parents' compassionate way of life, a philosophy of giving back, you might say, is what I've never forgotten. And I've tried to uphold, and I'm proud to say I think my two daughters, who I love so dearly, are following in that track. My daughter Emma's here with us today. She works for the Robin Hood Foundation. And my other daughter, who we are hoping will graduate from college this year, from NYU, has already started her own charity and has a real feeling for other people. So thanks to their mother and maybe a little bit to me, both the girls turned out fine. But this philosophy of giving back is really a work in progress. When I was young, I didn't have a philosophy of anything except maybe trying not to fail 11th grade French. Giving back in those days meant just doing good deeds. As a Boy Scout, or one of my first ones that I remember, I had the honor of walking Amelia Earhart's mother up to the polling booth every year at the Gleason Elementary School in my Boy Scout uniform. She was really a local celebrity in those days. But as I got older and became more aware of the world, I began to understand my father's commitment to do whatever we can for those in need. Working with visionary people like my longtime colleague Patty Harris, I really have developed my own philosophy of giving back both individually and with my company. And my philosophy is this. First, be entrepreneurial. Look for problems or needs that aren't being addressed and target them aggressively. Take tobacco use, for example, which was mentioned in the film. Despite the fact that unchecked, this scourge may lead to the loss of 1 billion lives around the world this century. That's 1 billion people this century. Funding to fight the epidemic has been shockingly short supply. We have invested heavily in this area, supporting key strategies identified by the World Health Organization, and we've already seen some true success on the ground, particularly in developing countries where tobacco companies are now marketing heavily. Part of our anti-tobacco efforts involves supporting a global adult tobacco survey to accurately measure the scope of this problem, and that relates to another pillar of our philanthropic approach. Second is be data-driven. From day one, and as mayor, I've always maintained that you can't address or even understand a challenge unless you have measured it. And that's why we've supported the WHO's first report on global traffic safety. The report, which came out in June, gives governments and NGOs for the first time a true measure of what we're facing. You should know that traffic deaths are projected 10 years from now to be the 5th largest cause of death in the world, as India and China get more and more cars and move away from bicycles. Traffic deaths are something we don't normally think about. We have been successful in this country in cutting them in half thanks to seat belts and airbags and more DWI focus, but nevertheless around the world it is a scourge, and with that understanding of what the problem is, we think these countries and NGOs can begin to apply solutions, both proven and novel. And then there's the third principle we try to follow, and that is to be innovative. You can't defeat intractable problems with old solutions. There's a reason why they haven't worked in the past. Philanthropists, like government, by the way, must be open to new approaches and tools and must even be willing to fail in search of resolution. The Women for Women project that we are supporting in Rwanda, I think, is a perfect example. We've helped train 3,000 women in that post-conflict country, women who've never held a job before, to learn a skill that is in demand there. It happens to be growing pineapples. And the government there has matched our donation with 150 acres of land, and today these women are selling their crop to the largest juice provider in the country. It is a smart, successful, multi-level approach, the proverbial hand up and not just a hand out. Now, when I heard the names of the honorees today, it did actually remind me of an Andrew Carnegie quote that a number of people have sent me over the years. Whenever I've made a big gift, people send you a letter and say, oh, congratulations. And this quote actually has been in a number. And Carnegie said, no man can become rich without himself enshrining others. And that can be read in two ways, I think. First, that no one can obtain material wealth unless he or she makes or invents or sells, in some ways creates a better and easier life for others, and that makes some sense. But the other meaning of the quote, I've always thought, is, and one that really resonates with me, is it suggests that no life can be full and rewarding unless you give to your fellow human beings and that we all have a responsibility to do exactly that. In fact, as everyone you're honoring this afternoon would no doubt agree, it is a privilege. And you don't have to be wealthy to be philanthropic. You can go, for example, in New York City, an organization, NYC Service, that we created in answer to President Obama's call for a nation of focusing on helping others. And if you want to paint roofs so that we use less energy, if you want to go visit seniors and explain why they should take a flu shot, if you want to help plant trees that will beautify our neighborhoods and clean our air, you don't have to be wealthy to help. And I think that the fact that some of us are able to help, as somebody said, on a grander scale is great, but it is no better than the person that spends their own time trying to make a life for others, tutoring a child or whatever it happens to be. And just as we are deeply honored, the four of us, to be recognized, or five of us today, with the Carnegie Medal, we all really do feel privileged every day to be able to do the very things that have earned it. And so on my own behalf and on behalf of my family, particularly my mother and father, who really started all this in my case, I just wanted to thank all of you for this phenomenal privilege of letting me participate in making this a better place for everybody. Thank you, and God bless.
Here's a little footnote to history, Mayor. Many years ago, when I was working for President Johnson, he was trying to persuade Justice Arthur Goldberg to leave the court to be ambassador to the UN. Now, he had some ulterior motives. He wanted that vacancy, but he also had thought that Goldberg would be good there. So he had lobbied and failed to succeed. And one day he called me in and said, I want you to call Justice Goldberg and tell him he has to go to the court. I said, but what am I going to tell him? He's leaving the Supreme Court to go to the United Nations? And he said, you tell him that if he goes to the UN, he might one day be mayor of New York. I did. He came. For a long time, I thought the old spiritual, he's got the whole world in his hand, referred to David Rockefeller. So many years later, it was only natural that I would produce a film called The World of David Rockefeller. David let me follow him all over Europe, finishing with a 5-course meal and 27 bottles of wine in the Champagne country of France. But the highlight was when we stopped at Shannon Airport for David personally to shop for 4 pairs of socks to keep him warm in Belgrade. At our final stop, clearing customs en route back, the agent actually confiscated the Cuban cigars I had bought and secured under David's seat, knowing that no one would ever dare look there. When the customs agent did, I thought they're going to arrest the chairman of the board of the Planet. They didn't. But that scene opens with a remarkable moment. David has arrived in his Oldsmobile at the airport. The Oldsmobile is parked right in front of the plane. It dies. Nobody can start it. And the film opens with David Rockefeller pushing his own Oldsmobile out of the way. David will be here in a moment to present the award to our next medalist. I've known Jessica Tuckman Matthews a long time, too, as one of our most prolific public intellectuals and as my nominee for the Nobel Prize for Peace. Last week, when the BBC announcer said the Nobel Prize has picked as its winner President, I thought it was going to be President of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and I thought, yes, Jessica's finally done it. She will one day. Before they come, let's look at this video, and then David Rockefeller and Jessica Matthews will make the presentation. To the video.
For Rachmi Koch and his sisters, philanthropy is a family tradition that began more than 40 years ago when their father, Vehbi Koch, created the first private foundation in Turkey. The idea? Improve education at all levels, foster the development of self-sustaining healthcare facilities, and support the preservation of Turkey's remarkable cultural heritage.
My father always said, what is good for the country is good for me. If my country is doing well, if my country is democratic, I survive, I flourish, I become more successful. This was his philosophy. So with this philosophy, he started his philanthropic activities.
Especially in the fields of education, health, and culture.
Turkey, with its 75 million people and powerful place in world history, has been the focus of the Koç family's generosity. As a result of their vision and energy, dozens of historic sites have been preserved, hundreds of healthcare institutions, including a medical school and nursing school, have flourished, and thousands of school children, college students, teachers, and administrators have been inspired towards higher levels of excellence. Today, Koç Holdings is Turkey's largest employer and, not surprisingly, a model of corporate social responsibility. The Koç family, carrying on a remarkable philanthropic tradition.
David Rockefeller and Jessica Tuckman Matthews.
What a wonderful event this has turned out to be. I'm deeply grateful to the generous comments of my good friends, the mayor and Bill Moyers and others, but more impressed by the events, the fact that all of you are here to celebrate the accomplishments of one of the great foundations in the country. Andrew Carnegie, along with my grandfather, were two men who made great fortunes, but recognized the importance of using those fortunes in a way that would be constructive for mankind as a whole and not just for their own purposes. And they fortunately had children who recognized that and who have generated their own children, and I think that our families can feel very happy at the fact that we are still around and still able to do some of the things that our grandparents hoped we would. But this evening, this afternoon, I'm particularly happy to be able to participate in celebrating the work of my good friend Rami Koç from Turkey. I've had the privilege of being in his home and seeing firsthand the extraordinary things that the Koç family has done in Turkey, a country that is basically a poor country. The Koç family were fortunate in making substantial sums of money, which enabled them to do for Turkey things that had never been done before. And on my visits there, I have had the privilege of seeing firsthand what they have done, and therefore and it's a privilege for me to be able to introduce him today. The late Vehbi Koç, the patriarch of the Koç family, founded the business upon the belief that his successes should go hand in hand with the prosperity of Turkey and well-being of its people. This deeply held conviction fueled Vehbi Koç's achievements as an entrepreneur and humanitarian. Rami Koç, we honor you today as the representative of the entire Koç family, which continues your father's great legacy of big giving. I just hope that others in this room will have the opportunity I have had of seeing those accomplishments firsthand. Andrew Carnegie believed that wealth is a sacred trust that must be used for the good of the community, and your community commitments epitomize this ideal. We recognize for you and your exemplary philanthropic accomplishments in the fields of education and health and culture through the work of the Baby Koç Foundation, the private foundation in Turkey and now one of Europe's largest in the world. You have sought to improve the quality of Turkey's healthcare system, to advance the country's education, and to promote the cultural resources of Turkey through the many museums and research centers charged with protecting the country's heritage. Alongside the foundation's investments, the Koç Group of companies carries out multiple philanthropic initiatives. In addition, you yourself have supported many primary and secondary schools and funded Koç University, whose laudable mission is to provide Turkey's young people with the world's first-class education, to advance the frontiers of knowledge, and to benefit Turkey and humanity at large. Here in New York City, I understand there will soon be a major announcement about your giving in the field of the arts. And Carnegie Koç family, we salute you all for your continuing and outstanding philanthropy.
On behalf of the selection committee, it's my great privilege to ask Rami Koç to come forward to accept this medal on behalf of the Koç family.
All right.
That's it.
Well, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored by the introduction of my esteemed friend, David Rockefeller. It might interest you to know that many years ago he asked me to sit on the board of Chase, International Advisory Board of Chase. And then he asked me, or he introduced me to the Council of Foreign Relations International Board, where I'm still serving. What a great pleasure for me it is to address you on behalf of the Koç family. This certainly is one of the most outstanding moments of my life. My late father, Veypi Koç, believed that a part of what you earn from the country must go back to it in the form of buildings, equipment, scholarships, and what have you. When he first visited the United States in 1946, he saw that there were foundations behind the big hospitals, universities, museums, and libraries. In other words, philanthropy was institutionalized in America. He became very interested in them and their legal framework. Upon his return to Turkey, he tried to set up a foundation, but there was no precedent. His charitable contributions were still unplanned, sporadic, and taxed. He worked relentlessly for 23 years with different prime ministers, with different governments, and different parliamentarians to constitute a law that would allow the establishment of private foundations and tax exemption for philanthropic giving. Finally, he was successful and he set up the first foundation in Turkey that carries his name. It is especially meaningful to receive this Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy on the 40th anniversary of our foundation. Our father agreed with Andrew Carnegie's words. It's more difficult to give money away intelligently than it is to earn it in the first place. We, his children, have followed his legacy and philosophy. The V.P. Koç Foundation, headed by my eldest sister, Mrs. Semahat Arsel, is currently active in the fields of education, healthcare, and culture. It was also the first foundation in Turkey to set up a private museum, which was named after my late mother, Satberk Hanım. Other private charitable institutions followed us. Many wealthy and established families and businesses have set up their own foundations and invested in education, healthcare, arts, and culture. I'm also very happy to see that there is a strong movement that aims to preserve the culture and heritage of our country. When an individual's standard of living rises, he starts to take better care of himself, and these healthcare institutions become more important. As people get wealthier and better educated, they become more interested in their cultural heritage. What doesn't change is the human factor. Therefore, the V.P. Koç Foundation continues to place great emphasis on education, beginning from the primary school level and onwards. Through its museums and research centers, it has worked to preserve the culture and heritage of our country. In the field of healthcare, it operates the American Hospital in Istanbul, a world-class institution, and provides high-quality nursing education and training. Today's social problems are becoming increasingly global and demand focusing on comprehensive solutions and cross-country alliances. Carnegie institutions around the world are a perfect example of how to cope with these global problems. We still need to work improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the recent trend of charitable giving in Turkey. Almost every business person would like to see his or her name on a foundation regardless of the bureaucracy and operating expenses or costs. I hope one day we will come together and collaborate to set up bigger and stronger foundations. With these thoughts in mind, I would like to thank you once again for honoring the Koç family with the Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy, and I accept this award not only on behalf of my family, myself, but also my country. Thank you.
And we go now to our next video.
Gordon Moore, trained as a physicist and chemist, understands better than most people the importance of catalysts. Together with his wife Betty, the Moores have combined their passion for the environment, higher education, and healthcare to provide multidimensional support designed to trigger growth and innovation.
And some of them are going to turn out to be very important. So I hope we can do that. We act as a catalyst to really get some new areas developed. And I find these exciting, and I think a lot of them will also be useful to mankind. I'd like to see something like a 75 or 80% batting average, not 100%. If we get 100%, we're not reaching far enough.
Both Gordon and Betty Moore grew up in small towns on the peninsula south of San Francisco, long before Silicon Valley became a home for the semiconductor industry and the company he helped get off the ground. For nearly 30 years, the Moores have been supporting programs in their home state, and now the reach of their philanthropy is global. For Betty Moore, the opportunities to fund facilities for the training of nurses has been especially gratifying. For Gordon, helping to preserve the fragile ecosystem of the California coast is a constant source of personal satisfaction. Gordon and Betty Moore, adding the spirit of exploration to a passion for philanthropy.
David Baltimore shared the Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine at the age of 37. What do you do for an encore after that? You go on to more important breakthroughs in research, including generating a plasma encoding the genome of poliovirus. You go on to become president of Rockefeller University and Caltech and to lead the American Association for the Advancement of Science. That's David Baltimore. Clerk to Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun, with a law degree from Harvard and a PhD in applied physics from Stanford, head of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, with a sure hand in its response to the 9/11 attacks, Dick Meserve can look back over an exemplary career advancing and promoting science in the public interest. As president of the Carnegie Institution, it is fitting that he join David Baltimore in presenting our next medal.
It is truly an honor to be here and to honor Gordon and Betty Moore. Let me say that Betty could not make the trip from Hawaii, but Betty is very much a partner in all of the activities that they have carried out together. In my life, there have been a number of key moments. The moment when Jack Whitehead said, "Would you start the Whitehead Institute?" The moment when David Rockefeller said, "Would you come to the Rockefeller University?" where, of course, I'd gotten my degree before. And the moment when Gordon Moore said, "Would you come and lead Caltech?" I mention all of those things because philanthropists have made possible and make possible for all scientists the activities that they carry out. The institutions we work in are all really testaments to philanthropic giving, sometimes on a small scale, sometimes on a large scale, sometimes on a monumental scale, as in Gordon Moore's case. I'm a great fan of the Moores. They're amazing people. Without pomp or pretense, they've gone about using their wealth to just make the world a better place. Gordon recruited me to Caltech, and then he was really a partner in nurturing that rare and great institution in Pasadena. Betty and Gordon's gift to Caltech allowed a generation of scientists to realize their dreams and our knowledge of the universe, of life itself, of our environment, and of the inner workings of the constituents of matter have been materially increased thanks to their generosity. Gordon, now that you're mainly resident in Hawaii, I miss seeing you, and I'm honored to be able to read this citation for your award. Betty and Gordon Moore, you are an extraordinary couple. We honor you today for your great benevolence over many decades. You are committed stewards of our planet, but you have not forgotten your nation nor your native San Francisco, where your multifaceted gifts bear the mark of your care. But most of all, you champion basic science and the health of science-based institutions. Today we also celebrate you, Gordon Moore, as a co-founder of Intel, a founding father of Silicon Valley, a seminal figure in the history of computing, and past distinguished chairman of the board of the California Institute of Technology. Through the work of the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, which you established in the year 2000 with a gift of some $5 billion, you have made great strides maintaining the Amazon basin, fighting the extinction of our Earth's rarest species, preserving marine ecosystems, and advancing the field of marine microbiology, safeguarding the salmon of the Pacific Northwest, improving patient care and nursing in Bay Area hospitals, and supporting San Francisco's science museums and lots else that don't fit in one sentence. Betty and Gordon Moore, you embody Andrew Carnegie's deeply held belief that with education, humankind can, quote, erect the structure of an enduring civilization. Your foundation's $300 million commitment to Caltech, matched by your personal gift of $300 million, made the venerable Caltech the recipient of the largest ever donation to an institution of higher learning, to the great benefit, as I've said, of the university's students and science departments, of the 30-meter telescope project, and many others. But Caltech is not alone. You have supported such eminent institutions as the University of California at Berkeley, and others that, like your foundation, are committed to basic science and excellence. Betty and Gordon Moore, you are and will remain an inspiration to current and future generations. This nation, indeed all nations, are grateful to you.
On behalf of the Carnegie institutions, I'd like to invite Gordon Moore to come forward.
Thanks for coming.
David, my mother would have said.
This should go on this way. Congratulations.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, thank you. It is a real honor and privilege to be here. My wife expresses her dismay in not being able to make it, but Hawaii is a place that's awfully hard to pry her out of these days. I guess our entree into private philanthropy was the usual writing a few checks, and the few grew to a few dozen, and then we developed the technique of throwing all the requests in a drawer and opening in December and seeing which ones we ought to give to. We finally decided that we had to do something a little more formal. It was awfully hard to know which of these appeals, all of which sounded attractive, were really deserving of our support. So finally we got to the point where setting up a foundation seemed like the best way to proceed. And we've been pretty happy with that after some startup problems. As you heard numerous times today, giving away money intelligently is not easy. And giving it away unintelligently can create some disasters. But we had a learning experience. I think we're operating pretty well now. We picked areas of significant interest to the family, particularly the environment, very important to the long-term health of humanity. Science, an area that is dear to my heart. There are a lot of opportunities to do things that are being missed by the usual funding agencies, and then things locally in the Bay Area. We have a few filters. The first thing is the program important? The second, is it measurable? Can we really see if we made progress or not? And third, can we make a difference? You know, we can find programs that go through a couple of these. You know, global warming is obviously something that's important, but it's sure not obvious we can make a difference. It is, however, measurable over a period of time. So we've selected things where we really think our impact can be measured and will be important over a reasonable period of time. It's exciting to look at the possibilities out there. It looks to me like the role of private philanthropy is actually expanding as the government backs away from some of the smaller but very important areas and starts talking in terms of trillions instead of mere billions with the size programs that they can really handle. Foundations, private philanthropy in general, can move rapidly. They can take high risk. They can afford to have failures. Everything doesn't have to work, but you can get in and out of something rapidly, and I think in that way make a lot more progress than some of the bigger institutions, the governmental ones in particular, that have to filter things through a large bureaucracy. So we're very happy to be participants. We're honored to get the award today, and we look forward to many more people developing wealth today, getting into the private philanthropy area. We think there's plenty of room for everyone. Thank you.
Our final but no less compelling film of the week. Let's go to the video.
Sandy and Joan Weil are builders. Shearson, American Express, Travelers, Citigroup, Alvin Ailey, and by combining the skill in building institutions with an instinct for philanthropy, they have made extraordinary contributions to the arts, culture, and education, particularly in the field of medicine.
I think the best thing is to have a partner that really knows medicine or music or education, because that's not my strengths, but that really can deliver and has the same kind of passion that you do and really wants to build the best kind of institution. I think I'm blessed to have that.
I'd always been interested in social service organizations, and this was my first sort of cultural organization, but Alvin Ailey put everything together because they do a lot of social service, community outreach camps, and of course the wonderful dancing.
The Weil's philanthropy extends well beyond funding support. Today they also serve as chair or co-chair on the boards of Weill Cornell Medical College, the National Academy Foundation, the Alvin Ailey Dance Theater, Paul Smith's College of the Adirondacks, the White Knights Foundation of America, and Carnegie Hall. Sandy and Joan Weil, applying a builder's discipline to the practice of philanthropy.
His father was a laborer and his mother a housekeeper who landed a job as a machinist during World War II and had to give it up and go back to cleaning houses when the troops came home. But Franklin Thomas has never forgotten where he came from or the people who implanted in him that fierce but quiet sense of dignity as he rose to be a mover and shaker himself as president of the Ford Foundation. Twice the Ivy League's most valuable basketball player, 4 years in the Air Force, at 33, the leader of the Bedford-Stuyvesant Restoration Corporation, Frank is one of those giants who at 6 feet 4 inches, I am delighted, even honored to have looking down on me. Nora Rundell is one of the influential people whose anonymity is key to her influence. She gets things done in the circle of Carnegie's kindred spirits because she is more interested in consequences than in credit. She's the chief executive of the combined Carnegie-Dunfermline Trust and the Hero Fund in Scotland. She doesn't know it yet, but she's going to give Judith and me a guided trip to Andrew Carnegie's birthplace the next time we go back. Nora and Franklin Thomas will present our next medal.
Thank you, Bill, for that generous introduction, and my thanks also to the Carnegie institutions, the Carnegie family, for your roles in this celebration of what I would call good works. When Vartan called me and told me of the plan to honor Joan and Sandy for their extraordinary philanthropic work and for their generosity, I didn't hesitate to accept his invitation. First, as most of you know, because it's difficult to say no to Vartan. And secondly, because I have such deep admiration and respect for Sandy and Joan and the work they have done that I wanted very much to be here as they were being honored. I admire them not only for their charitable giving in a financial sense, as important as that is, but also for their personal involvement with each of the institutions they support. They are truly involved donors, and through their involvement, they help multiply the impact of the funds they make available to these institutions. And I've seen firsthand the joy on the faces of those who have been beneficiaries of their generosity and their presence. And I've also seen the joy on their faces as they are involved in these activities. So Joan and Sandy, I want to add my congratulations to that of the Carnegie institutions, to both of you for the extraordinary work you do, your extraordinary generosity. And I think as one Brooklynite to two other Brooklynites, you've done well, and you deserve every honor that we can possibly bestow upon you. And now it's my privilege to read the citation. Joan and Sandy Weil, we honor you today for your remarkable philanthropic contributions to medicine, education, and the arts. You've donated many hundreds of millions of dollars that have helped heal suffering patients, teach knowledge-hungry students, and transmit music and dance to generations of grateful music and dance lovers. Your largesse has helped revitalize esteemed institutions, including New York's Carnegie Hall, a member of the Carnegie family, as well as the Weill Cornell Medical College and Graduate School of Medical Sciences, and the Weill Bugando Medical Complex in Tanzania, which proudly bear your name. Joan Weil, you are an indefatigable supporter of cultural, civic, and philanthropic endeavors. Your generosity, along with your distinguished record of service, has benefited a host of institutions, including the Alvin Ailey American Dance Foundation and City Meals on Wheels, to name but two. Sandy, you've drawn on your vast experience as a leader in our country's financial sectors to launch such impressive initiatives as a joint public-private sector partnership with the New York City Board of Education that established the Academy of Finance to prepare high school students for careers in financial services. You're the founder and chairman of the National Academy Foundation, which oversees more than 500 career-themed academies across the land. But that's not all. According to a recent issue of Business Week, while giving has totaled more than $800 million, your generosity, along with your distinguished record of service, have benefited numerous organizations, including Sidra, a teaching hospital to be completed in 2011 in Qatar, where you've spent time and devoted enormous amounts of your talent. New York Presbyterian Hospital and Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. Joan and Sandy Weil, if Andrew Carnegie were alive today, he would thank you for your imaginative giving, a testament to the fact that we cannot take our wealth with us because shrouds have no pockets. The more than 20 institutions founded by Andrew Carnegie present the Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy to you with both great pride and deep admiration. Thank you.
On behalf of the Selection Committee, it gives me great pleasure to ask Joan and Sandy Weil to come forward to receive their award.
We're matching.
Ah. Don't screw up.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nora. Thank you, everybody. I do feel very privileged and humble, and I do have arthritis, but I really feel so humble to share this day with such a distinguished group of generous and very special people. In fact, you know, I'll share something with you. Sandy and I were talking this morning as we're brushing our teeth and getting ready, and said, we're just amazed where we're going to be today. I mean, two guys from Bensonhurst, can you imagine? I mean, it's very, very exciting. You know, it's really very hard for me to thank you, Vartan, and all of the Carnegie foundations for giving this award, for doing work that really gives me such pleasure and such satisfaction. And I feel today that I'm up here representing all those who work so hard at the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, don't cry, the Dance Theater, Paul Smith's College of the Adirondacks, the White Knights Foundation of America, and the Women's Health Symposium of Weill Cornell Medical Center. Because without those administrators and the board of directors, these organizations would not be what they are today. And I thank all of those whose generosity have helped make these organizations grow and will continue to grow in the future, and especially so very important during these very difficult times. So now I would also like to thank my partner of 54 years. I'm crying from happiness.
It's hard to tell.
Sorry. I want to thank my husband, Sandy, for his hard work that really made our giving so possible, and for his advice and his consistent support for my passions, and for teaching me how to read and understand a balance sheet. It has always been very, very important to both of us to be obviously an active part of the organizations we support. Of course, the check is important, but just as important is the hands-on involvement. And I must say that that involvement has added so much to my life. So I thank all of my organizations for what they have given to me, because I feel that it's a real privilege to be made a member of the board and to become, as I have been lucky to become, a chairman of so many boards. So thank you all for doing this for me. Again, I want to thank you for making me feel so privileged and so humble to be part of today's awards. And I just thank the Carnegie Foundation for what they represent in philanthropy, and again, thank you more than I can say. Thank you.
Jerry, thank you. And since Bill said that he wants to close at 3:18, I don't have a lot of time, and I don't mind not having a lot of time. But I'd just like to thank Vartan for what he really does in the outreach of the Carnegie Corporation, and I've seen it in many different ways on many different continents, and to be able to have a friend like that where you can come for advice and ideas is really a blessing to, I think, my wife and myself. So Vartan, God bless you and thank you. And Frank Thomas, I would have to say that you're the best thing that happened to me at Citigroup. My meeting you has been really a pleasure, and you've been an inspiration to me, and you get us to think in the right direction. So thank you very much. And for us to be honored with the other honorees today, to be honored along with our mayor, who I think is the best mayor by far that this city has ever had. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I feel comfortable with the city bonds that I own, with the mayor going to be there another 4 years. And also to Rami Coach, who is a very good friend of mine, and the only thing that I do in the world of for-profit, and it's not for much of a profit for me, is to sit on Rami's board and be with his family and see what he's done in Turkey. And for us, we think that Turkey is an incredibly important country as we think about the future of this world of ours. And this gives me an opportunity to firsthand get a lot of knowledge, meet some terrific people, and maybe be able to make a little contribution. And Gordon, I think what you've done is really incredible. It's a lot of things that I really don't know much about. I've never learned how to use a computer. I don't have a BlackBerry. I don't even know how to use a calculator, but I do know how to talk to people. And I'm glad you do what you do and keep a lot of people very busy. So God bless you with with the way you're giving back. And finally, I'd like to really thank Joan, because Joan is the person that really taught me about social responsibility, taught me about how to be a good listener, and that it's more important to be a listener than one that's always sending the message, and taught me about long-term commitments. And from watching what she did, I got interested in certain philanthropic activities, and what I've worked on are institutions that I've been involved with for close to 3 decades, which would start with creating the National Academy Foundation in one little high school in Brooklyn in 1980, which now has 4 themed academies in areas that are growing in the United States, in areas like engineering, information technology, hospitality, and financial services, where we are in 500 schools in 41 states in the District of Columbia, with over 50,000 students this year and growing, and over 90% of our kids graduate. In the New York City system, over 97% of our kids graduate. The great majority of them go on to college. They do well in college, and they earn about 17% a year more compounded than kids that went through a regular program in that same school. So it's something where when you invest in it, you get a return on your money. And I think in philanthropy it has to be the same as in business. You have to offer the investors that are part of what you're doing a return on their investment. And I'm very happy to say that our medical college has done well through these difficult times. Carnegie Hall has done well through these difficult times. And basically, I think that it's happened because I love to work with people that are smarter than I am. And I think in all the institutions that I work with, they're all smarter than I am. We've done well. We're positioned to take advantage of these difficult times. Everything we do, we think about how can it affect the world that we live in, our community in New York, our country, and also the world, and how do we make the world a better place. And we work on that in the areas of healthcare. You heard something about Tanzania. Our medical school also does a lot of research in Haiti as it relates to HIV/AIDS. And we built a school in Qatar where we signed an agreement in April of 2001. We've been through the Gulf War. We've been through a lot of issues, and our school is incredibly successful. We now are building big research programs there. And when you want to think about how we're going to make the world a better place, it's going to be through music, which is a universal language. It's going to be through educating the people that are uneducated in all these countries, and it's going to be through health care. And we bridge these divides, and because everybody really wants to have the same kind of thing, they're looking for a better life. And I think those of us that have been fortunate, I think, have the obligation to use the brain power, the passion, whatever else have made us successful in the business world to help give back what we've made, and get our kids to sign something like we did when they were 5 years old. They agreed that they weren't going to get much benefit from what we accomplish, and therefore it's all going to go to charity. And that's what my wife and I are working on, and we've really, as Joan said, we've really enjoyed it, and I could never have done anything without the inspiration of the woman I've been married to for 54 years. So again, I thank her, and I thank you.
It's okay, Joan. Judith and I have been married 54 years, and she cries sometimes too. Despite having started 20 minutes late, we are almost precisely on time. I offered the 5 minutes Vartan had given me, asked me to take to sum up. I offered it to him back, and he said, no, take 4, and then he will have the last word. So, what began as a celebration, let's end as a challenge. My favorite journalist, George Orwell, said, things have reached such a state of affairs that the first duty of every intelligent person is to pay attention to the obvious. The obvious, that homeless man on the steps on 42nd Street as we came in. The obvious, 15 million people without jobs, 9 million of our fellow citizens working part-time because there are no full-time jobs. The obvious, foreclosures up 94% in neighborhood after neighborhood in this country. The obvious, if you come from a family earning over $96,000 a year, your odds of getting a bachelor's degree by age 24 are 1 in 3. If you come from a family earning under $36,000 a year, it's 1 in 17. Halfway through this decade, the editors of The Economist looked around at the obvious. These are ardent defenders of capitalism, and this was before the collapse. A growing body of evidence, they found, led the editors to conclude that with income inequality reaching levels not seen since the Gilded Age, and social mobility not increasing at anything like the pace of inequality, the United States risked calcifying into a European-style class-based society. Let me repeat that. The editors of The Economist said the United States risked calcifying into a European-style class-based society. That alarm echoed recently when the American Political Science Association, in a major study, found that increasing inequalities threaten the American ideal of equal citizenship, and the progress toward real democracy may have stalled in this country and even reversed. So let me end with recommending to you, very quickly, 2 books. On the theory that we learn a lot more from our critics than we do from our friends. I urge you to read Ralph Nader's new book. Here in his 70s, he's turned to fiction, a novel called Only the Super Rich Can Save Us. It's not an easy read at 600 pages. It's not a first-rate novel, but then Ralph was never a first-rate politician. But it is a stellar act of imagination of what could happen if 14 billionaires in this country pooled their resources to fight for democracy and the renewal of the American dream. He talked, after that book appeared, with 8 of those billionaires who play fictional characters in his book. What he found among all of them, he said, was that they were demoralized. He said, demoralized? Here you are with $3, $5, $8 billion and you're demoralized? I mean, with $1 billion a year, you could put an advocate in every congressional district in America and you could get health care, for example. But they were demoralized, he said, in the interviews he had with them, because they don't know what to do to save their beloved country. Read his book. Then there's a book I just finished, written by 2 marvelous British researchers, called The Spirit Level: Why More Equal Societies Almost Always Do Better. The core message is that countries that distribute their incomes the most equally have the longest life expectancy and the highest quality of life. If you want a blueprint on formulating social policy with instructions on how to extend life expectancy, decrease infant mortality, improve child well-being, reduce obesity, lower homicide rates, decrease school dropout rates, lower teen pregnancy, increase levels of civic trust, improve voter turnout, decrease drug abuse, lower incarceration rates, decrease rates of mental illness, and improve social mobility based on merit. Here it is in The Spirit Level: Why More Equal Societies Almost Always Do Better. So what Andrew Carnegie started has only begun. And my advice is, keep giving. Here for the last word is the president of the Carnegie Corporation, our friend and inspiration, Vartan Gregorian. For the last word is the president of the Carnegie Corporation, our friend and inspiration, Vartan Gregorian.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to want to give a big hand to all our honorees. Second, to all the presenters who are here. Bill Moyers, who's wonderful, always. And last but not least, I'd like all the Carnegie representatives to stand up so we can thank you for coming all the way here from all over the world to honor these honorees. Please get up. And Carnegie family too. Carnegie family too. Thank you very much. In this room, we have had many outstanding events when I was president of the New York Public Library. And I always ended my speeches the following way. St. Francis d'Assisi said, it's in the giving that we receive. And I always told the audience here, you have received more than you've given. So keep giving until it hurts. Thank you very much for coming. Good to meet you. Thank you so far.